Do you know the 14 traits of successful chiropractors? We've interviewed some of the top chiropractors in the industry and have identified the common traits that they all share. Jump on over to www.chirobusinessmojo.com to get your free report today.
Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Yes, I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Hello once again, and thanks so much for hanging out with me. Well, on the show today is Dr. Andrew Timbs. He graduated in 2005 from Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia, and he's owned several clinics in Australia. I'm going to let him go ahead and tell you his story about his practices and what he's doing now. Please welcome Dr. Andrew Timbs.
Thanks, buddy. Pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. And before we get started, I invite you to jump in and fill in any gaps I may have missed in your bio.
Yeah, well, basically, recently I've just sold my main practice. I suppose prior to that, I've just moved states as well. So not only selling my practice, but moved states from Adelaide in South Australia up to Queensland, Sunshine Coast, where it's beautiful, sunny and warm all the time. So recently over the last 6 months, it's been a big transition in life and sort of life-changing moves and, loving it.
Well, other than a change, to really beautiful weather, was there any other reason behind your move?
There wasn't originally because I do sort of specialize a bit in the golf side of things. So there was a emphasis on that when I moved up here to the Sunshine Coast. But, life changes and things change and that sort of didn't end up going ahead. And, it's given me time to put energy into sort of other areas. I just work with a mate of mine now, working as associate and help boosting his practice and getting that really successful. And that's really enjoyable, being sort of more on the other side of the fence for once. And then also, working on a supplement company and stuff that I'm pushing pretty hard, which is really exciting. It's nice to do multiple things all in line with my mission in life.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And you know what? Before we get too far into what you're doing right now, let's take a step back in time. Let's go back to the beginning. And why don't you tell us about why you became a chiropractor?
Well, that's an easy one for me. My old man's a chiropractor. So I've been born. I was adjusted when I was 2 hours old, and it's been something I've known for a long, long time. But even probably from the age of 12. Even though sports back then was probably my major focus, I was a bit of a sports freak. Still from the age of 12, I knew that I sort of wanted to be a chiropractor. It was a very easy early decision for me. It's not something I had to stumble across or anything like that. It's just been, I suppose, part of my life since I was born.
Well, let's talk about the practices that you've run up until recently. What was the style? You mentioned sports, but what was the focus of your practice and the atmosphere and the energy and the services you provided? Yeah, so
I'm quite a high energy, passionate person. And so that's really what I got across. I'm wellness and subluxation based. I practice very vitalistically. And obviously that's a refined skill over the years. I see a lot of people, saying, they might have wellness and vitalistic in their names or stuff like that, but, in their communications can be different things. So that's a skill and an art to learn. And so I've been, very, very subluxation and vitalistic based for most of my time and also teach a lot on the lifestyle side of things. And so that's really passionate side because, the better people do outside my practice, the more reliant they are on me.
And you had 2 locations, correct?
Yes. Well, we had multiple. We had more than that. My dad did partly own one of the largest group practices in Australia a while ago. But we had 3 at stage, 2 mainly at a particular point in time. So we sold one off a little while ago. And then for the last few years before I moved up here, it was really just working on the one main practice. And then obviously I sold that when men came up to the Queensland.
Well, as you know, this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, and so we really like to drill down into how your business operates or operated from the business standpoint side of things. So what were some of the things that you guys were doing, you and your father, let's talk about new patients first of all, and then later on let's talk about, patients that were current patients. How did you guys market to each one of those groups?
Well, we were quite lucky that we didn't because obviously, Dad was a very successful chiropractor for 40 years and he's still practicing. So we were lucky in the sense that we really didn't do a lot of external marketing. Every so often we might do the old newspaper stuff, but we hadn't done that for a very, very long period of time. So we were quite lucky in the sense that we didn't do a lot of external marketing. Most of our stuff, I suppose, was internal based. But there wasn't really necessarily a huge structure associated with it. I suppose with the care we gave and the results we gave and the interactions we worked on ourselves with our patients, there was sort of that steady referral base of new patients. So we were lucky in the sense that we didn't have to push too hard on that sense. We've got a really good structure on the flip side. What we do up here in Gympie, where I am now, is probably dinner with the doc is our major external referral source, and so it's getting very clear and focused on what you want to do. I see a lot of people try to do too many things and basically dip their hands in multiple things and not do any of them like extremely well. So we wanted to really focus and get really good at one avenue, and so that's where we've really focused on dinner with the doc, and that's become really, really successful. And then from a lifestyle side of things, instead of picking and choosing different topics and everything to choose from, we basically set an internal series of talks, like 3 different talks that we just rotate. And that's basically summarising all the lifestyle side of things and all the questions we've got over the years, try to synthesise it down into 3 talks. And that's, it's nice to have us focused, knowing exactly what's happening, and the staff like it because they know exactly what's happening and they know exactly what they need to control and focus on. And I think the clearer the vision and the clearer the strategy you have, the easier it is for yourself and your staff to make it very successful.
Well, how many speaking engagements would you say you have a year?
Probably 25 to 30. Every couple of weeks at an absolute, sort of a minimum. So, at least.
Well, and one last question on that. How long do you spend? Is it an hour talk that you typically give? Is it shorter? Is it longer?
30 minutes. So, so pretty much 30 minutes. Like our dinner with the doc is probably 40 minutes, but we don't go any further than that. I'm pretty straight shooter, straight to the point, and like I respect my time and I respect my patient's time. So I'm pretty stringent on that, and I really, really keep it to 30 minutes. And then if they want to have 5-10 minutes after that, that's fine. But I'm pretty strict on the time, and people can't really concentrate more than 30 minutes at a time.
Well, for most of us, being a public speaker does not come naturally. Is there anything that you've done? Did it come naturally to you, or is it something you had to work at?
No, it was my greatest fear when I was younger. I remember even in university, there was a couple of subjects I chose to lose 10% of my grade because I didn't want to get up and do a talk for 10 minutes. So it was a massive fear of mine. But really, it really comes down to your why. Once you create your why to be stronger than anything else, it becomes easier and easier. And it's just one of those things, like the first, it's, preparation and planning. The more you understand what you're talking about, the more comfortable you are. And, you create your first talk and you just got to jump in and do it. And, you got to sit there and rehearse it 50 times. If you have to rehearse it 50 to 100 times until it's automatic. And if it's automatic, then you get more and more comfortable at doing it. So I suppose it was doing that initially. And now after a period of time, you build up a big enough stockpile of, stories and then stuff like that, I'm very comfortable at getting up and talking.
Well, when it comes to the operational side of things, how integral to the success of your practices is a CA and your staff? Critical.
I put a lot of emphasis on my CA. I had an office manager that really, really did most of the running. Because, one of the weaknesses I would have would be from a training perspective. I've got the passion, the motivation, all that type of stuff, but I certainly wasn't a brilliant trainer. And, you basically find people that fill your weaknesses. And so I had a really good office manager and CA that was able to take on that role and do a lot of the running of the front desk for me. So that for me, my CA was very impactful and very had a huge impact on the success of the practice.
Now, did they help with the marketing, or is that something that you and your dad ran together?
No, I do everything. Nothing in our practice was ever organised by just the DCs or anything. Everything's done at the staff meetings, and everyone has input to it. And everything we did was a mutual decision. And basically we did some training and what we wanted to get across, or what we were particularly doing and what we were focusing on. Everyone was acutely aware of that, so it was definitely a team involvement on that.
Well, part of our motivation, really all of our motivation, I guess, for doing this podcast is because, there aren't enough of us out there being successful. Those of us who are like yourself, we have no problem spreading our message. But when we're struggling to stay in business, it gets really hard to do that. And if we go out of business, we aren't helping anyone, or we're not communicating our message either. So, given that it's difficult, is there any reason that you can pinpoint for why everyone is not successful?
I would say, the biggest thing for success in our profession would be consistency. And what I mean by that is that we all think we need the new Ute Butte way of doing things. We need the secret, message, the secret way of doing something, changing things all the time. The most successful, pretty much the most successful people I know, and one in particular here in Australia who's probably seen more people than most people for the last 3 decades. Most people would go into his practice and just say, shit, that is just boringly consistent. He has just done the same thing that's made him successful for the last 30 to 40 years, and he just keeps doing it. I think that is something that's lost, and I think we've, especially on the younger generations, even like myself and the younger generations, we get bored of things very quickly. We're instant society. We're changing things all the time, and you've got to stick to those things that work and just become bloody good at them and just keep doing it. And you water down what you're doing if you keep trying to find the next U-Butte thing to boost your practice and get that new patients or retention, whatever it's going to be.
Well, the most recent facts and figures that I've read about the utilization of chiropractic by the public is 14%, and I would venture to guess it's probably less than that, at least in the United States. Why do you think we are so underutilized as a profession?
That's actually a very misleading statistic. The truth about that, and I remember hearing Guy Rickman talk about this a few years ago, the actual utilization, if you look at the statistic over a 5-year period, the actual utilization of chiropractic is 50% of the population. So if you look at that, you can then deduce the fact that if 50% of the population over a 5-year period has walked into a chiropractic office, whose fault is it?
Did they walk in?
Yeah, no. Well, they walked into our office over a 5-year period. It's just saying chiropractic as a profession, we're crap at educating our patients. Yeah. Right? So we've had 50% utilization. Any company on the face of the planet, if they had 50% utilization over a 5-year period, would be unbelievably ecstatic. And that's what we get as a profession. 50% of people of the population have walked in over a 5-year period, and we're only keeping 10 to 12% of them. So we've got to look back on ourselves, and it's the certainty, the education of what the chiropractors are doing to the patients that is the problem with that figure.
I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but it makes perfect sense what you're saying. And yeah, I think it really does come down to an excellent point you just made. I guess our ability to communicate our message in an effective way. Do you have any recommendations for how we can be better at that? Yeah,
simplify it as much as possible. If you can explain chiropractic to the kids in your office, or your kids, or someone who's quite young, it takes art and refining to try and synthesize it down to very simplistic terms. And a lot of people think they have to get all technical and make themselves look like doctors and make themselves look really smart. But the simpler you keep it for everyone, the better it is. And the problem is, it's the same thing as consistency. You have to be a broken record, man. Like, you can't explain chiropractic to people once and expect them to get it and expect them to be lifers. You know, we've had the chiropractic message told to us hundreds of thousands of times, and we still have to work at it. You know, so it's doing those consistent things and being that broken record and explaining to everyone over and over and over again. And it might be obviously in different forms. You know, you're going to be explaining it in different forms depending on what happens to that patient at that particular point in time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You have to get good at that message and very concisely. People's attention spans are so short these days. So much is thrown at them. You have to be able to get in there and make a quick impression. And then the second thing I like that you're saying is that repetition is key. You can't just say it once. You need to say it a couple of different times in a couple of different ways. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And making it relevant to them, because if you make it relevant to them, then they're going to remember it. You know, if you just sit there and say, you know, you can have, you know, themes of the day and all that type of stuff are good in a sense. So obviously you're talking about something, but, you know, it's not always going to be relevant to the person in front of you. You know, so if you're making something relevant to the person in front of you, it's going to be more impactful and they're going to remember it better.
Well, if I came to you and said, hey, I just graduated from chiropractic school and I'm getting ready to open my own practice, and you could only give me one piece of advice, what would it be?
Focus and basically planning. And because I see a lot of people don't clarify their purpose and their vision far enough. They might get a reason for why they want to do. They might want to be a chiropractor, and you know, I see a lot of people trying to be a lot of things to everyone, where if you go deep down, like everyone wants to be a family chiropractor, you know, because everyone thinks that, you know, everyone on the face of the planet should be adjusted, which they should be, you know, but if you really nail down your purpose, like I see a lot of people who are family chiropractors who complain to me saying, man, I hate seeing those kids. I hate seeing those kids. The kids are the most annoying part. You know, they're noisy. They slow me down, all that type of stuff. And I'm like, well, yes, you want to be a family chiropractor because you want to try and see everyone and see the most amount of patients. But really, if you really got more focused on your niche market of people you really get excited to see, it doesn't mean you don't have to see families and doesn't mean you don't have to see everyone, but you have to have a more clear focus of the people that you want to see and the people you're going to attract. And you're going to attract more people than that, but you need to really get laser sharp on your purpose of being in practice.
Well, what if I came to you and I said, you know, I've been in practice about 5 years and I do okay, but there's some months that are better than others, and I feel like I should be seeing a lot more people than I am, and, you know, I just feel stuck. If you could give that person one piece of advice, what would that be? Yeah, very similar. Going back within themselves and clarifying their purpose. But probably the one thing on top of that with both of those is finding and continually getting together with a group of other chiropractors. The main problem that we have in chiropractic is that chiropractic is no longer a profession. Chiropractic is basically a job for most people, and there's a very big difference between a job and a profession. And we don't have that constant camaraderie, helping each other out, getting a group of chiropractors in the local area, meeting once a week, whether it's, we got digital formats now. You don't have to physically meet anywhere, but you need to constantly get together because you can't see your weaknesses. We're blinded by, what we think we should be doing or what our weaknesses are and what we should be working on. Majority of the times they're going to be incorrect. And we need people to help us do that, and we need people to help us be accountable. That's why coach is so powerful. But the simplest thing we can do is to get together with local chiropractors, get our profession back, get that love of our profession back, not just treat it as a job, and basically, work in unison. And I think that's one of the biggest things I see as the future of our profession is basically multiple practitioner practices. Because if you look at all the most successful practices on the face of the planet,
one, most of them have multiple DCs in, and so you've got that constant masterminding all the time, or they religiously get together with other chiropractors and hold themselves accountable, and basically help each other out in different ways. And I see that as going to be the future of where most of our practices should go, because we can't be the everything to everyone. Like we don't have the skills. Most of us don't have the expert skills in all areas of business. Like myself, like I'm more of a visionary, big thinker, motivational person, and I don't like details. You push yourself to learn the details, but if you can get together with other doctors and work as partnership, where you are working on each other's strengths and you're constantly focusing on the parts of business and practice that you love, and the other people can focus on the things that they love, but you can work together. I see that as going to be one of the most powerful changes that we could make in our profession. And it's going to unify our profession much greater. It's going to make more and more people much more successful and enjoy practice more.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about something you mentioned earlier, and that is what you're working on next. And you mentioned a supplement company. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so basically it's a new company called Prove It, and they basically do endogenous ketones. And so basically from the lifestyle side of things, we have understand the ketogenic lifestyle is hugely powerful for our health. And as we all know, there's been a lot of misinformation given by all the major companies around the world, pushing everyone to not understand what true health is and what we need to be truly healthy. And it's very exciting to have something that can, support the mission. It's not like us. I like something that makes us better, right? And it enables us to help us make our bodies to be better. It's like chiropractic. We're not trying to do something. Like, we enable the innate intelligence, the body, to express itself, right? So the body itself can be better. And that's what I like about working with this community and this supplement is it's all about enhancing every person to be better than they are. And, it's a no-brainer. Like, everyone on this call understands the benefits of ketosis and, how impactful it is on everyone's health. And this just is a supplement that enables you to really help the body take advantage of, performance, brain clarity, decrease inflammation, and the help it's giving to so many people is quite phenomenal.
Wow, that's exciting. We're definitely going to ask you for a link to that to put in our show notes a little bit later in the show. But before we get to that, I want to step back from chiropractic and really look at what success looks like in your life in general. So I want to talk a little bit about maybe some failures, obstacles, anything you've overcome in your life, because we tend to learn so many lessons from those experiences as opposed to our successes. So did you have anything like that, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, probably one of my biggest, I suppose, failures or challenges in life was a previous practice I bought. Probably one of the first practices I bought outside of our, obviously our main family practice. Because at that point in time I wanted to have multiple practices. That was a sort of a vision I had at that particular point in time. And I was pretty naive. Like, obviously had my dad there to a point, but I probably, I didn't use the guidance that I should have. And, I bought that practice being reasonably naive and all that type of stuff. And make a long story short, the main practitioner there who was going to be staying on, pissed off, and I didn't put either of the two chiropractors under a contract, and then the other one left and turned the practice into crap, and then I basically had to shut the practice down. And so it's like anything in life. Like, you got to learn from your lessons, you got to learn from your mistakes. Overcoming those basically is the lessons I learned. I came out with a huge amount of debt associated with that, and I'm still paying it off. But you've got to learn these lessons in life, and it's probably one of the most, from a very young age, my dad's been very good at, and that's one of the greatest probably things that he's implemented with me is, the mental side of success in life and setting goals, and I've been involved in that since I was young. So being an action-orientated person and learning from mistakes, and I didn't sit down in my bed and cry about it. I had a few $100,000 in debt, but who cares? You get on. The best word in the English language is next, and so you just get on with it and you make your next one more successful and learn from the mistakes you had previously.
Well, that's great advice, absolutely. The quicker that you can fail, the faster you can get on to success.
That's one of the only ways to succeed. Fail fast.
Well, it's the way I've succeeded, so I have made my own share of mistakes as well. Well, you mentioned your dad. In addition to your dad, do you have other heroes that you look up to?
Yeah, I would say, well, I was obviously heavily involved in the golf side of things. So, Greg Norman and Tiger Woods were two of mine that I, greatly respected. Greg Norman on and off the course. A lot of people don't know that Greg is an unbelievably good businessman. And so looking at his determination that he had in his life and the success that he had, and then, someone like Tiger Woods, from just the consistency of high performance. It's one thing to be able to get to the top of your field. It's another thing to be able to stay there for so long. And probably from a business side of things, the two people I probably look to most is probably Richard Branson and Elon Musk. Probably, Elon Musk more so these days, and that's just basically the positive impact that he's having on the world, and just the laser sharp focus that he has in what he's doing, and he couldn't care less what anyone else in the whole world thinks of him or what he's doing. He's got a mission that he wants to achieve, and as we're seeing, there's nothing that's going to be able to stop him from achieving it.
Well, is there anything that you do on a daily basis that help you to have discipline? Things like affirmations or rituals or meditations, things like that help you keep your eye on the ball and become more focused?
Yeah, the biggest one, and obviously when nobody's perfect, and we like to do it on a daily basis, but it never happens that way. But you got to keep, it's like everything. You just got to keep refining yourself, and you got to keep going back to the basics. But self-talk and affirmations would be the one I do most consistently, and I've done that from a very, very young age. Just constantly that self-talk. But I suppose the self-talk and affirmations go hand in hand for me, because basically my positive self-talk that I do is really just a whole bunch of affirmations. And then, from a flip side of that, maintaining the positive energy and basically the consistency of what I'm doing, and trying to get better and better at planning, and being more consistent. Like, there's a lot of stuff you got to do in your day, but, it's like everything in life. You can always get better and better at everything you do. You never stop trying to improve.
Well, our time together is unfortunately drawing to a close here shortly, but before we let you go, we do have a few final thoughts we want to get to. Do you have a favorite book you'd like to recommend to Mojo Nation?
Yeah, it would probably be The Energy Bus. That's, it's probably the one I'm focusing on mostly at the moment, and it's a phenomenal book. Just to really, follow the 10 principles in that book and get the audio book. And it really helps you focus on, especially if you flick it over to a chiropractic side of things, loving your patients and serving your patients. And probably one of the most powerful things that we can do in practice. And what I've, it's taken a long time in practice to get to where this point. Like I always struggled when I was younger with the, you think you're loving your patients, you think you're serving, you think you got to serve your patients to get more, and it was never really clarified. But probably one of the biggest things I'm doing now is respecting patients to a point. But the funny thing is, it's really focusing on patients to give them the opportunity to leave my practice. And what I mean by that, it's a powerful psychological change, to give to patients, whether it's the group report we do, given the option to say, look, if we're involved in correcting the cause of the underlying problem. So if you can't, commit to the time and energy or finances at this particular point in time, you're not going to offend us. we don't want you to start if you don't think you can commit to it this time. Just come back to us when you think you can. And then taking the opportunity when someone, maybe, gets out of pain for the first time, giving them the option, remind them of what's going on and say, look, this was your goal when we talked, a week ago in the new patient orientation, and your goal was to get this level of health. You're out of pain, you're feeling good now. Do you still want to get there? And remind them, but say, look, basically giving them the option to leave the practice. And it's phenomenally powerful how powerful that is from a mindset and how much more attraction that gives to your practice, because it gives the patient the understanding that you give a shit more about them than you do of the money they're bringing into the practice. And if you're constantly trying to push them out the door, in a loving and in a smart way, like if you're constantly trying to push them out the door, they're going to get more of a psychological impact to say, well, this guy's not in it for the money. This guy really cares about what I'm doing, and he wants me to get the best results. And it's amazingly powerful how simple that is, and that's taken a long time to be able to get to that point.
Yeah, I really like that. That resonates with me, and I talk to a lot of folks on this show, and that viewpoint doesn't seem to be as prevalent as I guess I wish it was, because that's very similar to how I've run things in my practice. And my feeling was this: look, if I take care of this person and they basically get permission from me to leave at any time, and they're not being held against their will, they kind of relax. They know that I'm not in it for the money, just like you said, but they get so much satisfaction out of my care, when they start feeling good, that they go out and they tell a bunch of other people. They're much more likely to refer, and so I end up, I think, in the end, I made much more in terms of just money because I was willing to let it go. Yeah, absolutely. And they're there because they've made the decision to be there. Like, you look at, we did like quite a long time ago, we did a survey in the practice of, and we had a very wellness-based and, very good PVAs and everything. We did a survey of why people continue to make their schedule of appointments. And the biggest answer was because the doctor told me so. And, even though, we weren't telling people to, like, you obviously are telling people to be there, but if you're constantly going back to the patient and saying, look, are you satisfied with where you are? Like, we realize this is where you want to get to, but this is where you are now. Are you happy with that? And give them a push out of the door, they're making the decision to be in your practice. It's not that you're asking them and saying, this is what you need to do to get correction. If the more you push people out the door, the more they have to tell you and be firm on them making the decision to be in your practice, not the other way around. And that's a powerful psychological change for the patient, because they're the one who are making the choices to be there, not because we've told them this is what they need. Well, what's the best business advice you've ever received? I would say it's probably not anything in particular. I'd say from my success, the best thing I've received is the fact that my dad took the time to go through goal settings and basically the mental side and the motivational side. And from when I was, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, we would set our goals routinely. Like, I would be going with them to the CJ Mertz talks when CJ used to come to Australia, and seminars, and, so installing the thirst for personal development and success from a very, very young age was probably the most impactful thing I've ever had in my life. And I do that with all. I've got 5 kids, so I do that with all of my kids, basically from day dot. As soon as they start talking, they're reciting their affirmations and stuff when they go to bed and all that type of stuff. So installing that from the youngest possible time. And, I was blessed that I had a dad that was involved in that, and he was gracious enough to teach me that from a very young age, and gave me that thirst to do it for the rest of my life. Well, what is the best way for people to contact you and find out more about what you do in your supplement company and anything else that might be going on with you? Yeah, probably the easiest is either through email, and my email is doctimbs@gmail.com, which is DOC
timbs@gmail.com, or Facebook. I'm just under Andrew Timbs. And basically, probably those two ways. If you wanted to find more or distribute it or anything like that in the practice, because it is very brand new. The company's only been going for a year, and it's just absolutely going bananas. So if you did, then you probably one of those two ways is the best way to do it, and then we can talk more from there.
Well, Dr. Andrew Timbs, thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us here today and sharing all your insights into practice and success and beyond with our listeners. And I'm definitely going to come say hello next time I'm in Australia, which I hope won't be too far off.
Absolutely, man. It's living the dream, buddy. It's 27. Well, 27 for you guys is bloody freezing. I'd say it's 85 degrees, beautiful sunshine, and I have to deal with that pretty much day in, day out up here on the Sunshine Coast. So I've got a tough life. I enjoy it.
It sounds like you're surviving well. Well, thank you again, and we'll talk to you. Excuse me. Thank you again. We'll talk to you in the near future.
Pleasure, buddy. Anytime.
Thanks for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast at www.chirobusinessmojo.com.